Hi everyone, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. Today I want to speak about Donald Trump and his big announcement yesterday in the White House, where he announced those tariffs on countries around the world, and specifically how it relates to the European Union and Ireland. Now, this has been much vaunted by Donald Trump through his campaigns over the past number of years, and of course he has followed through on what he's been speaking about. Over the last number of weeks, there's been tariffs pushed through on the steel and aluminium in terms of bringing industry back to the United States, and also on the car industry as well. Now, what's really important with what he spoke about last night, and I'll just touch on a few points in terms of the response from the European Union and Irish political leaders around this. He spoke about American industry being reborn, and he has this idea to bring production and manufacturing industries back to the United States. Now, we've seen a massive decimation of those industries for many years. In particular, it's been a lot of driven by the bankers on Wall Street and the ultra capitalists who have outsourced production to many other countries to exercise huge profits at the expense and cost of people who have lost their jobs in the United States, such as areas like Michigan and many states where the car industry was the tenant of the lifeblood of those communities as well, which have been destroyed. We saw it during the time of the financial crash, where many of those homes ended up being foreclosed, and of course many were sold remarkably across the European Union as well, to profit from the misery of people who are struggling because of the decisions of those very wealthy in American society. But of course, Trump now's idea is to bring manufacturing jobs and production jobs back to the United States. Now, he said that many countries have been looting, pillaging, raping and plundering the United States for many years. And he also said that they have been ripped off for over 50 years as well. Now, of course, we've seen what's happening in Ireland in terms of the political response to this. There is talk of up to 20% tariff being pushed on the European Union across the spectrum, but of course pharma currently is being left off that, but there are plans to bring sectoral tariffs in the future over the next period of time, and we'll see how that develops, because the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of Irish exports to the United States are coming from pharmaceutical companies. And of course Ireland has pursued this tax haven model, which has allowed many multinationals to come to Ireland and global corporations to profit from a low tax regime. We've seen that with the intellectual property rights. We've seen it with scams like the Double Irish and many more tax scams, where many corporations pay next to no taxation in Ireland. But of course, Ireland has been reliant on corporation tax as well, and overly reliant. So currently a quarter of the taxation in Ireland comes through corporation tax. So again, it's really put all their eggs into one basket. And this has been the approach of the Irish government and successive Irish governments. And when you consider Micheál Martin now is claiming that we have to stay calm and we have to, we're through uncharted waters and we have to steady the ship and follow the line of the European Union. Of course, Micheál Martin was the man that helped drive us off the cliff as part of Bertie Ahern's government in the previous economic crash. Now, of course, Micheál Martin now is trying to claim that he's going to guide us out of this, one of the people who was responsible for the financial crash. And shame on the people who had rehabilitated and resurrected Fianna Fáil. But also what we've seen is the low tax regime in Ireland, and not playing into the support of ordinary people who have struggled because of these policies. And what's really important to note is that Ireland per capita is one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world, in terms of profits per employees. Currently 165,000 people are employed in US multinationals. But in terms of profits since 2014, it's remarkable profits, record profits really, in terms of being pushed through Ireland, working the tax haven and tax scam. At the same time, while many of our industries in Ireland have been decimated, our resources have been sold off to the European Union, and it's impacted ordinary people most of all. But what's really important with this is that Ireland, as I said, the reliance on the foreign direct investment has been a fallacy, because it's just put more profits into the hands of the super wealthy in society. We saw that during COVID, we saw them recent times as well. And now the European Union are talking about strong retaliation measures. You couldn't make this up. Which would create more issues in terms of higher inflation, higher costs for people, not to mention ordinary people and the ones who are the sharpest end of society in terms of people on low incomes, fixed incomes, will be impacted most of all by these policies. But what the answer is for the Irish government is to access new markets. This is their access new markets. Really pushing the same agenda. They're doubling down on the failed policies which have already left us in a complete bind because of what's currently transpiring in Ireland. And also what's really important with this is the approach of the European Union. They will talk about rearming Europe plan. They'll double down on this. Yeah, we need to take the threat from the east in terms of Putin and start rearming Europe and start cutting back on public spending to build up and boost the military industrial complex. So they'll say, yeah, the economy is doing great now, so they'll push and divert towards a war economy, which I've spoken about in many videos in terms of the deindustrialization of Europe because of the sanctions placed on Russia, 16, 17 rounds of sanctions, and all those issues arising to drive towards the military industrial complex, plants like Volkswagen that are moving and into that position as well. And also what's interesting is Micheál Martin has been talking about more infrastructure and investment in capital projects. There was never an investment in capital projects over the past number of years with the explosion in population, with the pressure on public services, with the homeless and housing disaster. There was never any drive to invest in what people actually needed when you see the sharpest end, people dying in the streets because of homelessness. And also the drive is towards the capital markets union. This is more of a consolidation and centralised approach towards enhancing more private investment in. And they're going to lash down any sort of trade barriers they have to have a free-for-all, unregulated market in Europe. And it's going to create mayhem because what it's going to do is going to funnel more money to the very, very rich in society at the expense of ordinary people. And there will be more social impacts and economic impacts because of what they're doing. But again, let no good crisis go to waste, and maybe drive in towards the digital euro and drive in towards raiding citizens' bank accounts in the name of standing up for our values. This is what they'll pursue over the next period of time. You really couldn't make it up. Really fundamentally, we need to take the power back. We need to have a serious conversation in Ireland about our continued involvement in the European Union. But the danger is with the politicians at the helm, you'll have the same agenda going forward, even if we were an independent, truly independent country, because they'll still pursue the tax haven model rather than actually build any strong indigenous domestic industry, support small businesses, look at taking control of our borders, talk about what's happening in the north of Ireland in terms of the different tariff arrangements, working towards united Ireland for the people and by the people, not run by Westminster, Brussels or Boston or whatever you want. But again, this is what the Irish government will double down on over the next period of time. And they won't talk about paying back the national, or actually stopping paying back the extortionate national debt. This year, 15 billion euro will be spent in debt repayments. Of course, that won't be mentioned at all because we can't tackle the bondholders and the bankers and the very rich who are benefiting from our misery. But of course, this is how this will be portrayed, and they'll have their lapdogs in the media pushing this over the next period of time, tighten their belts. It's in the national interest, shared values. All this nonsense will be pushed down people's throats in the ways to implement deep austerity, smashing of public services and ordinary people, and people will suffer because of this. People need to really wake up to what's going on in Irish society and demand so much better, that we deserve to put the interests of the people here rather than being lapdogs of Brussels, where the trade competencies lie at the behest of a trade commissioner and the European Commission, an unelected head with van der Leyen and Sefcovic as well as trade commissioner. It's absolutely ludicrous, but of course the opposition are fully behind this as well. So really fundamentally all we have in Ireland is a uniparty. We know strong proper opposition, but we need to speak out about these issues and affect change from the ground up, and that's how change fundamentally comes. So thanks for the support of my videos, really appreciate them, and I'll keep you posted as well. So Slán, take care, bye bye.